Well, hi everyone. I'm John Retlin with a retro review of WCW Thunder from June 7th, 2000. The go-home show for the Great American Bash, and holy fuck, Thunder really was the most unnecessary mainstream wrestling program, I would say, in history. At least since the 90s started, and even through now, it is really painfully unnecessary because nothing ever happened. Anything that did occur on the show was almost in a vacuum because any of the storylines they tried to tie from Nitro to Thunder and then from Thunder to Nitro really didn't carry over. I mean, everything was just like it. It was like it was in its own alternate reality where it's like, okay, WCW Nitro, WCW pay-per-views, and then Thunder is just kind of here. It really was a painfully unnecessary show. So anyway, and we have Bischoff and some attorneys that are here to serve Goldberg with some papers. They're here to suspend him. You're done. You're gone for 30 days, or you're gone for 90 days with no pay. 30 days would have been more interesting because then it would have meant, hey, we have a chance to reset this with Goldberg and, build something good with him. Build. There we go. You know what? He should have had his own construction segment on Nitro. Would have made as much sense as anything else that was happening. So anyway, the big surprise for the Great American Bash is hyped. A deal that is going to rock WCW to its core, but he doesn't tell us what it is. And then mentions the suspension, and then says Jeff Jarrett will not be able to compete due to falling off the ramp at just before Great American Bash on the Nitro. So he's like, no, we can't compete in the championship match. And then he comes out in a full body cast, this kind of stuff for a pseudo full body cast. And says, I'm sorry, I can't compete, apologizes to Nash. And then Nash says, hey, I got a bat here to take your temperature. And then swings at him and everything. And it turns out that Jarrett isn't injured. This went on for over 10 minutes and could have been accomplished in like 5. They didn't even need to rush through all this stuff. He does lay out the attorneys with a whole bunch of bats. They could have actually been attorneys and just been taking bat shots. It wouldn't be the first time somebody wanted to hit an attorney. But anyway, this was absolute shit. And we get to a match. Oh, wait, no, we don't. We get to MIA again backstage. And then Russo and David with some old people, because they are going to get some old people to be part of Ric Flair's retirement party. And then we get Bischoff, Kimberly, Miller, and Jarrett all yelling at each other. Bischoff says, everybody leave, I have to think. And then Daphne with Crowbar versus Chavo Guerrero with MIA, Misfits in Action that is, and versus Disco with the Filthy Animals. And Tigress joins commentaries as a 3-way match for the Cruiserweight Championship that Daphne held. Remember, Daphne was still Cruiserweight Champion at this point. One of the longer reigning champions in 2000, oddly enough. This was really, really bad, horrendous. Everybody kept interfering. All this bullshit happened. Miss Hancock shows up, yells at Daphne. Kimberly lays her out. And then G.I. Burrow runs in, hits the bookend on Disco. Chavo tops Disco 1, 2, 3. So, new champion. Okay, cool. We got it off of Daphne. And I like Daphne, don't get me wrong. But they weren't presenting her as any kind of legit threat, even though she could do some shit. So at least they got the championship on somebody. Somebody that they, I guess, could take seriously, even though by that point nobody was able to be taken seriously in WCW because everybody felt the same. Any of the big stars were booked to look like idiots, and that goes for heels and baby faces. So then Miller is, during the commercial break, threatens to fire MIA, and Kidman is talking to Tori in the ring while talking to her through the screen, says, after this match, we need to talk. Horace is with Kidman for this match against Van Hammer. I'm going to call him Van Hammer and not the MIA name that he had, Corporal Stash, because do you get it? Do you fucking get it? It was bad. It could have been a handicap match. I don't really know. I started to tune out at this point because the show was so fucking bad. Horace interferes, top rope elbow from Kidman, 1, 2, 3, and then here's Tori. She slaps him. That's all wrapping that story nice and neatly. So then Ernest Miller tries to teach old people how to dance. Well, who the fuck was this for? Why was Ernest Miller being featured so much on TV? I know he was a friend of Eric Bischoff, but I really don't get why. Because he wasn't any good. Ernest Miller was fucking rotten. He couldn't do anything. He was fucking terrible. So anyway, we then get to the Ric Flair retirement party. We get Vince Russo and David Flair there. We get a cake in the ring, and then we get a bunch of old people trying to sing He's a Jolly Good Fellow. Russo pretty much wrecking everybody's eardrums with his goddamn voice and the fact that he had no charisma and no business ever being on a wrestling program or being involved in wrestling, period. I mean, honestly, I do not understand how he kept getting jobs. Oh wait, Jeff Jarrett gave him a job when it was TNA because he was that desperate for people, even though Russo wasn't a creative guy at all. So then we get Rick attacking. He attacks David when this, like, big old, novelty cake is brought out, like, strippers pop out of. And then Russo's like, I wasn't born yesterday, tries to climb in the cake, and he gets comically, lost in the cake, where he's hanging out of it. David gets attacked, Russo gets his face put in the cake on the table, and that's it. This is well into the show, and we're continuing to just do this comedy shit that wasn't even that good in the 80s when they did this stuff. They did something like this in Mid-South with, a cake incident and stuff like that, and I hate to say it, but I didn't really care for that, even though I know it, led to a feud with Bill Watts and stuff like that. I didn't care for it. It was done better than this, do not get me wrong, because Vince Russo can't do anything right. But yeah, the cake stuff, I just never fucking understood it. I just never understood why, somebody's face got in the cake, it's great. It's great for TV shows. It's not great for wrestling. So then, Bischoff wants Goldberg arrested if he shows up. Oh, and then his truck was there. His truck was there at the end of a tunnel after Rick Steiner and Tank Abbott had arrived in their own car. And then we get a backstage segment between Big Vito and Johnny the Bull, the Mamalukes, and they're the hardcore champion. They are the hardcore champion. They're co-champions, or they both just trade off. And they're going to face the Wall. The Wall, who now has dark hair and a dark goatee. And they have a match starting backstage, a battle out and everything. Battle out to the ring. Shane Douglas attacks the Wall, table bump, and then a splash from Vito. 1, 2, 3. This is exactly the kind of bullshit that we did not need to fucking see. Then the Wall rises up like the Undertaker and chases Shane Douglas in what looked like a venue that was maybe 4,000 people. Now, it was in Knoxville, Tennessee. That's a pretty good hotbed for wrestling. Don't get me wrong. They got some pretty passionate fans going all the way back to 60s, 70s, and eras like that. But this just was absolutely fucking horrendous. And then Tank Abbott rather, comes out and attacks Vito and Johnny the Bull, and then says he wants Goldberg in a rematch. Even though Goldberg's going to be suspended, I don't think Tank watches the show or understands how suspensions work. Suspensions. And then says, I want somebody big, I want somebody tall, I want somebody sexy to face me in a match, and it's Kevin Nash. It's going to be Kevin Nash. And then Tony Schiavone had left the ringside area, and his son was in the crowd. And this is important. He had left and he had gone into the crowd. Well, his son had a drink and threw it in Tank Abbott's face. Now, yes, obviously that was planned. Maybe you don't want to irritate a guy that's absolutely goddamn insane. And what happened is basically Schiavone, got his son, as any father would. I mean, that would totally make sense. And then, Nash, Tank, Rick, and Scott, they all have a brief melee. And then Bischoff says to Scott Steiner, you're going to run the New Blood Gauntlet. Wait, where did I hear this before? Nitro. It was on Nitro. And the match was given about 2 more minutes than the Kevin Nash one. And says Nash and Goldberg can't interfere. That's going to be important for a little bit later, or Nash loses a shot. Goldberg shows up, and then the police show up, and then Mike Awesome shows up in an ambulance, and then faces Lash LaRue, or Corporal Cajun, or Corporal Ragin' Cajun in the Cajun. I don't have a goddamn clue. Was it an ambulance match? I don't fucking know. Because we get a table, we get DDP jumping in, and then that halo, that cast halo that Canyon had that Mike Awesome's been using to mock him, he hit DDP with that, hit him with a powerbomb through the table, and that's it. This is how little the matches mean. I'm just zipping through all this goddamn stuff. We then have G.I. Bro and Hugh Morris versus Palumbo and Sean Stasiak. Tag title match. Some old guy in a general's uniform shows up and is in Major Guns' ear, and he's one of the old guys that they had in that Ric Flair, mental institution segment that was back about a year before this, when he was president for life and then sent to a mental institution, because that's smart. I know Rick is nuts, but good lord, he was one of the old guys dancing around there. And the commentators even made mention of that. Heenan was still a commentator here, and I think this is either his last episode or one of his last ones. And then the Flexi Lexi bar gets used, the little bendy bar thing that Palumbo's been using, and hits one of them in the head. I think he hit Hugh Morris in the head. Yeah, he hit Hugh Morris in the head. 1, 2, 3. And by the way, G.I. Bro and Stasiak are facing off in a boot camp match at Great American Bash, which I will have that review up later this week, or maybe it'll be right after this by the time you see this, because I upload my retro reviews at random. Just want to let you guys know that in case they aren't quite on the 20-year anniversary of the goddamn show. So we then have Chronic attacking the champs on the ramp, and it's another melee. Hooray, melees. Melees all around. Melees for everybody. Ernest Miller does a dance, and then Sting shows up, and then Sting gets a fire extinguisher in his face, and then gets Scorpion Death Drop. He gets hit with his own Scorpion Death Drop, and then Vampiro pours gasoline on the announcer's table, and Not going to set it on fire. No, he throws Sting through it, or at least tries to, but the table doesn't give at all. It looked like it hurt. And, yep, attempted arson on the table again. Hooray. And yells at Sting, says, "This is going to be your flesh." Mean Gene interviews Hollywood Hogan. There's always one bad apple at the bottom of the barrel. I'm not sure that's how that saying goes, Hulk. And then he repeats himself about beating Kidman at the Great American Bash and getting his title shot at Bash at the Beach 2000. New Blood Gauntlet, Scott Snyder versus Candido, Mike Awesome, Chuck Palumbo, Shane Douglas. I think Stasiak was also there, and Ernest Miller jumped in at one point. Ernest Miller got, almost dropped on his head. Not that it would have affected anything. He was a brainless twat. There was a bad landing for the first guy, Chris Candido. Belly-to-belly suplex off the table. Or off the top, that is. Would have been interesting if it was off the table. So mind you, Nash and Goldberg can't interfere. Nash is like he can't take anymore. He goes outside the door. And Jarrett must have had his own camera because he whacks him with a guitar as soon as he steps out the door. Why was he there? Who the fuck knows? Goldberg can't interfere either. Oh wait, here's Goldberg. We get a DQ melee thing. So that's the third or fourth melee we've already had. Goldberg shows up. Lays out everybody. This is after Scott Snyder had been put in a straitjacket and in a body bag. This is how overbooked this was. And then Goldberg lays out the rest. Bischoff and the cops show up. And they're marching to the ring as we go to the end. That's how the show ends. So you got to tune in to Great American Bash, I guess, to see what happens. You got to buy the pay-per-view to see what happens on a live TV show. Oh boy, Thunder is really getting a whole lot worse. You know what? There. This is what I think of a lot of this stuff. It's a good thing that the network is for a low price, because if I had to pay like $1 per episode here, I just toss them on the ground. It's not even worth tossing them in the air. If I had to pay like $1 an episode or whatever for this, I'd probably go absolutely insane. I can get my fix, on Route 66, and also watch some really bad wrestling. And appreciate the fact that maybe modern wrestling isn't as bad. But you know what? I love wrestling. I'm going to keep watching this. So look for the Great American Bash 2000 review soon. Anyway, agree, disagree with what I said. Like, share, subscribe. Twitter handle in the description. I'm John Retlin. I'll see you soon.